Hi, my name is Ross Atefi. I'm the founder and senior wealth advisor at Yatra Wealth Design. And today I'm going to be talking through our process for helping you to identify what your specific risk tolerance is. And risk tolerance in this context means how much volatility or up and down movement are you comfortable seeing in your portfolio? We know and understand that to get return, it's necessary to take some level of risk. And in many cases, risk and return are correlated. So unfortunately, we can't take no risk and expect to get a lot of return. We have to take some level of risk. But every investor's risk tolerance is unique to them. And as advisors, we always want to make sure that any recommendations, any portfolio that we put into action for you is in line with your specific risk tolerance. And what we've also found is many people will say, oh, I'm a moderate investor, I'm a conservative investor, I'm an aggressive investor. But each person's specific concept or understanding of those terms is different. And so if you say you're a moderate investor and I think moderate means something different than you, then we could end up not being on the same page. So instead of just using those terms, we have a very specific process for helping to get exactly on the same page and understand how much volatility, how much up and down movement you're comfortable seeing. And that way, our recommendations, our portfolio we put into action is right in line with that. So, getting into it here, we're going to use this software. And we're assuming here that this client, this sample client, has a $1 million portfolio. And we're going to take you through a few questions, and I'm gonna demonstrate this. So imagine if we have $1 million portfolio. I'm going to ask, just starting off, I'm going to say, hey, John and Mary Sample, with your $1 million portfolio, how much risk are you comfortable taking over the next 6 months? And risk here means, how much downside would you be okay seeing in your portfolio? And at what point is it too much? Meaning, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night and you might realize or start to feel like you need to sell or maybe just make an emotional decision instead of a rational decision. And you also would have the chance to make this much on the other side, right? And so this is just an arbitrary starting place. But starting off here, if you had $1 million portfolio over the next 6 months, would you be comfortable potentially having a downturn of 140,000? So seeing a $140,000 decline over 6 months. Would that be too much for you, or would that be something that you could deal with? Nobody would want to see that, and of course, that's not what we're planning on. But if it did happen, would you be able to kind of ride it out and not get too disturbed where you're going to make an emotional decision? And so John and Mary Sample may say, you know what, that's honestly that's too much. So I'd move it down. And maybe they'd say, you know what, I think I could handle maybe like a 10% decline over 6 months. Okay, so let's start off there. And then we go to the next question. So the next question here says, okay, we have two options, and either one is better than the first. And there's no right answer here. This isn't a trick question or something like that. So we have two options. The one on the left says we can choose a portfolio with less risk, but the same upside potential. So this one could drop by only 59,000 over the next 6 months, but it could still make as much as almost 100,000 over the next 6 months. Or we have on the right, which is the more reward with the same level of risk, which says, hey, I'm comfortable potentially seeing a downturn of 100,000 or 10% because I want the chance at making more, so up to 158,000 over the next 6 months. So let's say John and Mary Sample decide, you know what, I'm still comfortable with the 10% potential decline and I want the opportunity to make more. So we're going to go with more reward, same risk. And then the next question here says, okay, well, you're comfortable with that. What about even a little bit more risk? So what about a potentially 13% decline or 127,000? But you could make even more as well. So you could make as much as 20% or 195,000. John and Mary Sample would say, you know what? I'm really not comfortable with the potential to lose more than 10%. So over 6 months. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the one I just chose. And then the final one here, we're kind of dialing it in now, and they choose the same one again. So John and Mary Sample in this example landed at a 51 risk score, which means they're sort of right in the middle from a risk tolerance perspective. This is, certainly considered a moderate investor. And now we're on the same page around what that really means. And John and Mary Sample may have actually thought they were conservative investors, but when they actually, went through this questionnaire, we realized that they're actually a moderate investor, right? They scored a 51 out of 100. And that's really more of a moderate portfolio here. And again, a 51 means they'd be comfortable, or at least they'd be able to deal with a range of returns over the next 6 months of a potential downturn of up to maybe 98, 99,000, up to maybe 100,000 over 6 months, with the opportunity to make about 16% or 157,000 or so. And, I always say, as you can see here, this says a 95% historical confidence interval, which means that 95% of 6 month periods are going to be within this range. So if we start investing today, with $1 million, 95% of the time over the next 6 months, it's that your returns are going to be within this range. But, these are sort of the extremes within that range, right? So most 6 month periods will be a lot less on the downside and less on the upside. So maybe, more standard 6 month period would be maybe, down 5% to up 10%. That's a more standard 6 month period. These would be more extreme 6 month periods. But if we're comfortable with the potential to see a downturn of this much, then we'd be comfortable with the portfolio with this level of risk. And so, assuming that we talk through the rest of your financial situation and plan, and this fits in line with that, we as advisors will make sure that our portfolio that we put into action for you is going to be within this range. Hope that was helpful in understanding how we help you to build out a portfolio that you're comfortable with and in line with your risk tolerance. My name is Ross Atefi, and with Yatra Wealth Design, hope you have a great day.